If you know anything about me personally, then Doctor Who is my all-time favourite show. It's literally the one programme off the telly that I can't get enough of. Now, if there's one thing that any casual Doctor Who go will know about, as well as any enthusiast into lost media, was that when Doctor Who was just getting started, it was in the rather dark age of archiving British TV programmes. For television stations, it was just a cultural attitude at the time that TV shows weren't seen to have had a long-term financial future, meaning that sadly, for the whole of Doctor Who's black and white run in its first 6 seasons, there are some incomplete episodes, with seasons 3, 4 and 5 having some rather spotty episode counts. Now thankfully, during the time that these episodes were being broadcast, there are some off-air fan audio recordings, so we can listen to every single missing episode, which is very lucky because not all Lost British programmes have that luxury. We've had fan attempts from Loose Cannon who have reconstructed the episodes via using any surviving material, photographs or clips. And still utilising that audio, the BBC have commissioned animations, just to make the episodes feel ever so more complete. And while it is still the next best thing, you can't beat watching the actual Lost episode. So today, I'm going to count down 10 stories that I personally would love to see rediscovered. Now, before we begin, I just want to state that I don't claim to be any official authority, that these are stories that fans definitely want to be rediscovered. Rather, this is just my own personal wish list. So if there are any missing Doctor Who episodes that I didn't mention on the list that you would love to be rediscovered, then all by means, share them down in the comment section. And also, if this video is your type of cup of tea and you want to see more like it, then all by means, subscribing to the channel would be very much appreciated. The Celestial Toymaker was about the Doctor and his companions Stephen and Dodo being abducted and whisked away to another reality by a godlike being named the Toymaker, who puts the companions through deadly games, all within a complicated maze for them to try and find the TARDIS. Meanwhile, the Doctor is forced to play his own game, the Trilogic Puzzle. If the travellers aren't careful on how they play their cards, then they might be stuck there indefinitely. Originally, the story was proposed to be a soft crossover with the Doctor Who programme and the George and Margaret theatre show. However, the original scriptwriter of the performance revoked his rights and characters to be used in the show. Thus, with only 1 month to go before production would begin on the programme, the script had to be entirely reworked. A character named Cyril in the serial ended up wearing clothing that looks similar to the comic book character Billy Bunter, a troublesome boy, a precursor to Dennis the Menace. Cyril actor outlived his line that him and Billy Bunter were one and the same. This ended up with the BBC getting into a little bit of legal trouble. Actor Campbell Singer additionally improvised the nursery rhyme "Eeny Meeny Miny Mo," being the infamous racial slur rendition. There's also been contention that actor Michael Gough, who played the Toymaker, may have been playing in yellowface for the role, as he's wearing Asian garment, a costume that was recycled from Marco Polo, another lost Doctor Who story. And also the name of the Celestial Toymaker, the first word Celestial, does have some roots of meaning Asian and foreign, although the word Celestial may be more related to the more popular term for the word, meaning beyond Earth and into space. And the Asian outfit that the Toymaker wears in the story may be completely unintentional, of making the Toymaker seem more Asian, as there's nothing further in the story that implies that he's meant to be. The Toymaker was meant to make his return to the show in season 23 in a story titled The Nightmare Fair, although due to complicated issues beyond the crew's control, the original planned season was thrown out, in favour for the Trial of the Time Lord storyline. However, in 2023, the Toymaker finally made his return to the show in the 3-part Juggernaut special of that year, with Neil Patrick this time taking the mantle of the Toymaker, now officially making it the longest gap between TV appearances of a Doctor Who villain, marking a gap of 57 years. However, today, only 1 episode of the 4-part serial still remains, and unlike a lot of other Doctor Who stories on the list, the Toymaker doesn't have any surviving telesnaps. A telesnap being a sort of screenshot from the actual episodes. However, there is a plentiful amount of high quality coloured images, so we still have a fairly good reference to look back on with this story. In the second TV adventure of the Second Doctor, Him and his companions Ben and Polly land in Scotland 1746, where they're kidnapped and taken prisoners by the Highlanders. The travellers are caught up in a complicated ordeal as they now have to survive the aftermath of the Battle of Culloden. The serial was notable for being the introduction story of Jamie McCribbin, who would be the longest serving companion of the show. With the exception of Power of the Daleks and the Three Doctors, Jamie would appear in every single story that featured the Second Doctor. Originally, it wasn't intended that Jamie was going to join the TARDIS team. However, the ending ended up getting refilmed after Jamie proved to be quite a popular character with audiences. In the early years of the show, the program did pure historical stories, meaning with the exception of the Doctor and the TARDIS, there would be no sci-fi elements to it. However, the pure historicals were gradually being phased out, in favour for the sci-fi monster of the week storylines. It wouldn't be for another 16 years that Doctor Who would do another pure historical, the Peter Davison story, Black Orchid. However, so far there have been no more pure historicals made for the programme, making the Highlanders the penultimate of one of the last pure historicals for the show. Unfortunately, as we're going to see, a lot of the really famous pure historical stories are sadly missing, with the Highlanders having no surviving episodes of its 4-part run. A few censor clips that were cut out of the Australian broadcast were rediscovered in the late 90s. Additionally, a full set of telesnaps does exist for the story. The Mythmakers was a pseudo-historical story set during the Trojan War. While the war is believed to have happened, the story themselves are surrounded by so many myths and legends that it's been difficult for historical researchers to ascertain the truth. In the episode, the Doctor finds himself aligning with the Greeks, where he makes the suggestion of making a wooden horse. The Greeks will secretly hide inside, and the Trojans will bring the wooden monument into their city, where from then, the Greeks will make their surprise attack, with the Doctor being the maker of the legendary myth of the Trojan horse. The Mythmakers was a particular favourite of the cast and crew of the show. However, at the time, the story wasn't very popular with audiences, as viewers were anxiously waiting for the 12-part storyline The Daleks' Master Plan, which was teased before the broadcast of the Mythmakers. However, over the years, Mythmakers has slowly been gaining a cult following. Unfortunately, it's perhaps one of the most lost Doctor Who stories, as there's no surviving episodes of its 4-part run. There's additionally no telesnaps and very few production stills of the programme, and while audio does still exist for every single missing Doctor Who episode, unfortunately the audio copies that are left from the Mythmakers have particularly poor sound. Although we do have a couple of seconds of moving footage of the story, recorded off a television screen on an 8mm camera, so that's a little something I suppose. The TARDIS team lands in Tibet, where a series of murders have taken place around a monk monastery. At first, it's believed that the Doctor is the culprit, but it's actually a group of Yetis. After the monks are able to capture one, it's revealed that the legendary abominable snowmen may actually be robots. But who's the mastermind controlling them? Co-writer Henry Lincoln had conjured up the story after a chance meeting with Patrick Troughton, who was growing a little bit tired of stories that were set on another world and wanted to return back to an Earth-based story. Thus, writers Lincoln and Merson Haseman wrote out a story based on the cryptid The Yeti, set within the Himalaya Mountains. The cast and crew did extensive location filming on the Snowdonian Mountains of Wales. The production crew had high hopes that the Yetis were going to take off in the same fashion as the Daleks and the Cybermen. Thus, a sequel serial was already within the works, just shortly prior to the Abominable Snowmen's broadcast, being 6 parts long in total, but sadly today, only episode 2 remains. The Massacre has Doctor and Stephen landing in 16th century France, just 3 days away from the Saint Bartholomew's Day's Eve massacre. The Doctor and Stephen ends up getting separated, with Stephen trying to make sense of the whole historical situation. Stephen then sees the abbot who looks exactly like the Doctor, believing that it's his friend in disguise. Stephen tries to make an alliance with the abbot, but it only puts him further in hot water. The Massacre was considered to be a favourite amongst Peter Purves, who plays Stephen, and William Hartnell, the Doctor. With the absence of the Doctor, Stephen is the main lead and carries the whole story. The story of The Massacre came about after William Hartnell had expressed interest of playing an evil doppelganger to the Doctor. Unfortunately, out of its 4-part run, no episodes survive. It's perhaps the most missing out of any Doctor Who episode, as there's no telesnaps, very few production images. We don't have any visual reference of what the Doctor looked like in the Abbot's costume, and it's one out of 3 Doctor Who stories that have absolutely no moving footage. The others being Mission to the Unknown and Marco Polo, although depending how you view the ending to the previous serial Edge of Destruction, but we won't get into that here. The Massacre is additionally famous for the monologue that the Doctor gives near to the end of the story.
Perhaps I should go back to my own planet, but I can't.
In the Daleks' 4th storyline for the show, the Dalek Empire aligns themselves with other alien civilizations to create the Time Destructor, a device that will easily make the Daleks the supreme beings of the entire universe. Thankfully, the Doctor is there to interfere with the Daleks' plans, but this might just be his hardest battle yet.
I'm afraid, my friends, the Daleks have won.
The Daleks' master plan is by far the longest Doctor Who story, coming in at about 12 episodes. All 13 if you count the one-off Doctor Who episode Mission to the Unknown, which didn't feature the Doctor, the TARDIS, neither his companions, instead starring the Daleks and 2 missionary astronauts. The one-off Mission to the Unknown acted as a precursor for what was to come. In Whovian culture, Master Plan has been classed as quite an infamous lost classic, with some fans even considering it to be a holy grail of the lost episodes. And it was recently voted as the 3rd best William Hartnell story in the Doctor Who magazine, and it was considered by many fans who grew up watching Doctor Who at the time as their all-time favourite William Hartnell story. It's just a shame that today, out of 12 parts, only 3 episodes remain. By week 7 of the serial, the date had coincided with Christmas Day. So to have a break from the ongoing drama of the storyline, episode 7, titled The Feast of Stephen, was designed to be separate from the Daleks' master plan, so if viewers missed this week, it wouldn't entirely matter, since the episode itself was set on Christmas Day, and it ends with the Doctor breaking the 4th wall, wishing everybody at home a happy Christmas. The Feast of Stephen was seen as having no resale value, as it would have to be rebroadcast near the Christmas season, but also since it had no bearing on the Dalek storyline, it was decided to simply remove part 7 out, thus making the Daleks' master plan an 11-part serial for when it was resold overseas. With no duplicate copies being made of part 7, The Feast of Stephen is the one Doctor Who episode where it most likely doesn't exist anywhere in the world.
Happy Christmas to all of you at home.
The final story of William Hartnell as the main lead for the show, titled The 10th Planet, is about Mondas, Earth's long-lost twin planet, re-emerging from the far depths of space. On Mondas, the inhabitants have converted themselves into beings named Cybermen, once humans like you and I, although have now twisted themselves into something very unhuman. The Cybermen plan to drain the Earth's energy to maintain their own planet Mondas. Meanwhile, the Doctor is struggling to hold grip over the situation. In fact, it appears that the Doctor may be slowly dying. The 10th Planet is monumental in the history of Doctor Who, in the fact that it introduces the Cybermen, who are easily the most famous Doctor Who monsters in the realm of pop culture, only second to the Daleks, and additionally being the first time that we get to see the Doctor regenerate into a new face, although at the time it was only called Renewal. Being 4 parts long, the 10th Planet is mostly intact, but frustratingly, episode 4, the concluding part, is missing, which easily makes it a much more missed story. Telesnaps do exist of episode 4, and there are some off-air 8mm clips of the episode. As well, in 1973, on an episode of Blue Peter, they featured a 25-second regeneration clip from the story, so we at least have the most important moment of the episode in broadcast quality. But alas, Whovians are still clamouring to see the entire 10th Planet as a completed story. In 1993, there was a false alarm that a character by the name of Roger K. Barrett did have possession of the episode. During the negotiation process with the BBC, the home video division was quickly preparing a VHS release. Actor Michael Craze, who played the companion Ben in the story, recorded 2 introductions to the VHS release, one stating that the episode was still missing, while the other proudly announcing that the episode has been safely returned, the latter of which you can find on YouTube today. But alas, the whole thing turned out to be a hoax in the end. In 2013, The 10th Planet was released on DVD, with Part 4 being represented as an animation reconstruction. Landing in the year 1289, the TARDIS ends up being taken to the hands of Marco Polo on his great journey across Asia. Over the course of many months, the Doctor and his companions try various ways to retrieve the TARDIS. This is by far the earliest missing episode of Doctor Who, only being the 4th storyline for the programme. This is where the arc of the Doctor begins to change. In previous stories, the Doctor could be quite bitter and, well, very selfish. But it's here he begins to take a warm fondness to his companions Ian and Barbara. And dare I say it, this is where the TARDIS team starts to feel more like a family. Sadly, this historical epic that lasts for about 7 parts has no surviving episodes. In Fury from the Deep, the Doctor and his friends come to a refinery base. With the aid of his sonic screwdriver, the Doctor hears a heartbeat amongst the pipes, suspecting that there must be something alive within the refinery. However, a gas refiner named Robson takes extreme measures to make sure the Doctor and his friends don't look into it any further. It turns out that the creature is actually sentient seaweed that has the ability of claiming a host. The possessed humans are able to kill others via a toxic gas. This Doctor Who serial was aired in 6 parts, but alas, none of the episodes have survived. The master tapes to Fury from the Deep survived as recently as 1974, before they were wiped over in favour for newer programmes. This was the last of the 60s Doctor Who episodes to be erased in this fashion. The story was renowned for being very well directed, making it all the more sad that no episodes have survived from it. Although Australian censor clips were later rediscovered, as well as raw footage from a B-roll camera from episode 6. A full set of telesnaps as well survives from the serial. This story was notable as it was the introduction of the Doctor's handy sonic screwdriver. While the Troughton Doctor rarely used it, it would be a more recurring tool for later incarnations of the Doctor. It's been highly hypothesized as to what the original screwdriver looked like in its first appearance, as there are no clear photographs of the Doctor using it in action, and until the day the episodes ever do turn up, we will never know for certain. In 2020, the BBC made an animated version of the story utilizing the original surviving audio. With the TARDIS stolen away, the Doctor and Jamie are lured into a trap where they're kidnapped and sent back in time to Victorian England. Now cornered, the Daleks force the Doctor into conducting experiments on Jamie.
What sort of test?
Do not question.
I will not be your slave! Doctor, I beg you.
No harm will come to you if you agree.
The evil of the Daleks was intended to be the Daleks' final story in the Doctor Who programme, as the original author/creator of the Daleks, Terry Nation, was trying to create a spin-off show of the Daleks. Hence, at the very end of the story, it appears that all the Daleks have been destroyed. However, on the day of shooting of the Daleks' destruction, a call was sent in by Sidney Newman, original co-creator of Doctor Who pleaded with the shooting crew to not destroy all the Daleks, and to just leave a bit of breathing space for the possibility of the Daleks to return to the show. So at the last minute, they gave the Emperor Dalek a flashing light to indicate a pulsating heart, that the Daleks, or at least the Emperor Dalek, would just survive this occasion. And 5 years later, the Daleks would return to the show in Day of the Daleks. Sadly, out of 7 parts, only episode 2 still exists. During his tenure, Troughton had at least faced the Daleks twice. But his first encounter of the aliens and power of the Daleks, none of the episodes exist anymore, making part 2 of Evil of the Daleks the only surviving episode where we can see Troughton face to face with a Dalek.
What are they called, these creatures?
Doctor!
Telesnaps do exist of all the episodes of the story, as well as behind the scenes footage of the Daleks' destruction in episode 7. As well, in 2021 the BBC had released a new animated version of Evil of the Daleks, utilising the original surviving audio.